on the western slopes, there was this massive landslide. And this is crazy. Tad is my witness. This is some crazy stuff going on out in Colorado. First things reported was a massive mudslide. All the media, massive mudslide covers the entire area. I said, what are you talking about? Massive mudslide? This area has gotten like a 1 inch of rain in the past couple weeks. There's not much rainfall there. And if you look at the pictures, of course, you can see there's not much snowfall, snowpack there either. Now, this area flowed out like a lahar and went over hilltops, covering things like cement. And the mixture that went down this hillside, came out of the mountaintop basically, is a sandy, rocky mixture. There's no mud in the whole damn thing. There's not even a puddle. And I'm not kidding. You can watch the helicopter flyovers. It dried out almost instantly. Now, this got me suspicious, right? I see this. I'm like, what is going on here? So I go on Google Earth and look up the area that CNN is showing. And guess what's there? Fracking operation. The only one around for miles. So I make a post and I say, look, there's fracking operation here. And within minutes across my YouTube and Facebook pages, multiple people appeared saying, I'm a local. Well, they said two things. Comments were saying, I'm a local. There's no fracking operation there at all. Dutchsinse is misinformation, saying that. And another group of people saying, I'm a professional geologist. This is on Facebook. I'm a professional geologist, and there's no fracking going on in the area. Both sets of people. And guess what they both had in common? They were both double-letter name people. And we're talking 6 or 7 of them. Russ Rosenstein and Brandon Branishine, and I mean just double letter after double letter, right? Like fictitious characters like Lois Lane, Peter Parker, Mickey Mouse, and Donald Duck. Anyways, they come over denying that there's any fracking operation there. Meanwhile, my video, I'm zooming in on the area, and there's this, fresh new frack pads, new compressor station, pipeline station. Now, guess what? When I got challenged on that, it forced me to go look deeper. And this is a message to any oil shill. I know you're listening because I announced that I was going to be talking about this tonight. This is a lesson for you. If you confront someone who's telling the truth on something that they're showing in a satellite picture, you're going to force them to go find more proof to back up their claims. They're not going to back off. Like me, I'm not going to back off. So I went and verified the area and found out that it's called the Colibran Gas System, and that it's run by a company called DCP in Occidental, which they basically have fracked the hell out of the area since the 1980s and built new operations there as late as 2011. New ones, new frack wells. And the U.S. government, U.S. Department of Energy, partnered up with ExxonMobil, or Mobil at the time, to do drilling into the area that we're talking about here. Now, they since didn't develop that drill spot that collapsed. They developed all around it. The reason is there's high pressure liquid sand in the ground. You can go look it up. I've provided links to the USGS and CERI, CERI, who provides all the seismic data for the Midwest. They've got a whole article on the Colbrand, sorry, I keep pronouncing Colbrand, Colorado gas system that is high-pressure liquid sand under the ground that contains a large amount of leftover oil from the previous oil pumping operations. And they've been bringing in, and get this, CO2, trucking it in, big trucks of CO2 like you put in a can of soda, and pumping it into the ground. And they call it CO2 sequestration. In other words, storing CO2 in old oil wells. Some genius, and he's a geoengineer, by the way, came up with an idea that you could capture carbon capture in old oil wells and store that carbonation underground like filling up a can or a tank of carbon dioxide. Again, the same fizz that you get in your soda. So they've been pumping high amounts of CO2 down into high-pressure liquid sand for God knows how long now. And now, at the top of this mountain, at the top of this fracking operation, in between multiple wells, there's an eruption of sand and rock with no lake, no mud, no nothing except for sand and rock. Now, I'm showing this all. I'm just showing it. I'm just like, where is the water, guys? And now USGS comes out. They had a town meeting last night. Looks just like Bayou Corn, guys. Just like Bayou Corn. 150 people, 200 people packed into a little room with USGS guys up here saying nothing's going on. Now, keep in mind, USGS is the one that's there telling everybody what's happening. Instead of some hydrologist or river flow specialist, it's the USGS there. Okay? And USGS says there's another lake forming up top. Right? And they show on the local news, even on CNN, they talk about this conference that happened last night at the town hall meeting, I guess is what you should call it. And there's the USGS pointing to the shadow at the top of the mountain. We've all watched the video now, right? Tat, you've seen it. We've all seen it. The helicopter flyover. They're pointing to that shadow that's up at the top of the mountain that was literally a shadow. You can brighten it up and see right through it. They're saying that's the lake and that there's a new lake forming that could burst out and wash away the entire town. No shit. And they're talking about evacuating the nearby people 2 miles away near Colbrand. This is, again, on CNN. This is not my own words. They've even interviewed a lady who's leaving her farm, and they're all packing up at least close by and leaving because of this threat of a new flood. Now, the shills coming over to my page, the oil company paid pet shills commenters, robo-commenters, mind you, coming over saying, flooding rains are happening here nonstop. Some guy makes a video and he has rain playing in the background, guys. He has rain track. You know, this like it's not real. He's sitting there. He's playing rain in the background saying, see, don't you see? It's totally raining here. I live here. It's totally raining. Meanwhile, I go look it up, clear. And all the helicopter footage. They did the flyover, blue sky, nice and clear. And now the shills came back with, oh, well, it's snowpack melt. That's what it is. When you go look at the helicopter photos, now they're saying it's a waterfall coming off the top of the mountain that's filling up the pool that's going to wash away the town. It's all a bunch of BS on part of clearly what's a fracking operation, high-pressure sand ejected from the ground. Now, everybody's probably asking, how? It's simple, guys. You got to go back the last 2 months or 3 months and look at what's happened along the northwestern edge of the craton. First, you have to understand what the craton is. It's the unsubducted plate that sits there undisturbed for the last, well, they say hundreds of millions of years. I debate that on time frame, but the craton is the main portion of the U.S. plate that extends from Idaho south through Yellowstone, along the western slopes of Colorado, down through the South Colorado fracking operations, where it makes a hard right-hand turn and goes through Oklahoma and North Texas, and then makes a northeastern turn up the East Coast. And there's been a series of earthquakes that have happened there over many months now. A swarm in Oklahoma, slight swarm in South Colorado, huge swarm up in Idaho and at Yellowstone. Yellowstone confirmed to have moved 4 inches upwards, raised by 4 inches, and moved 1 inch, 1.5 inches southeast since New Year's. And there's been a collapse in Washington State, huge landslide collapse, which was preceded by a small earthquake. And as soon as that earthquake was announced in Washington State, they dropped the story and let it go because they were trying to blame it on flooding. But it was a mid 1 to 2.0 earthquake, which happened about 45 minutes to an hour before the collapse in Washington State, followed by a collapse of a butte in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Whole volcanic butte fractured. They said it was flooding. Guess what? We busted their balls for about a week, and they came back out and said, oh, it's just a natural butte fracture. It's not from flooding. And you look at the area, it's dry. There's no water in any parking lots, no mud flows. It's a fracture of a butte. Why? Because the whole plate is being displaced from the northwest. And we saw a series of large earthquakes happen off the coast of Oregon and British Columbia, Canada. We're talking 7.0 earthquakes off North California, Oregon, and British Columbia. So those are happening at fresh lavic fields that the USGS has announced over the last 2 years that most geologists just didn't even pay attention, but they announced that their sensors were buried off the west coast by new lava formations. And they announced that the Yellowstone magma chamber and Mount St. Helens magma chamber are recharging with new fresh magma. This is all in the past few months, guys. Then we saw the swarms happen at Yellowstone, and they came out and denied that there was anything going on, said the bison were just running out of the park, blah, 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 all the bison. They got sidetracked on the bison. Meanwhile, the USGS went up and installed a bunch of new monitoring equipment in Idaho. Why? Because the western Idaho, eastern to central Idaho, is the Yellowstone magma chamber's western portion. So the magma chamber from Yellowstone extends all the way across Idaho almost. They verified that via underground radar soundings, ground penetrating radar that went down into the magma and sensed how big the chamber is. And that's where the earthquakes are occurring. So due south of there, we've got Jackson Hole. Due south of Jackson Hole, you've got Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Due south of Glenwood Springs, you've got this collapse. 50 miles to the northeast of the collapse in Colorado, there's Dutchsinse volcano. The only volcano in Colorado marked by the USGS is just 50 miles away. The whole craton is in flux, and it's showing at multiple earthquakes in Oklahoma and southern Colorado fracking operations. And so this sand burst, this liquidized sand burst that I believe came out of that fracking operation, and chances are the 3 guys that were sent up went up. There was rumbling reported beforehand, right, guys? They said they were going up to check an irrigation ditch. My best bet is that somebody went up and either opened something, or it was just a bad time coincidence that the guys were there when the CO2 liquid sand explosion happened out of the fracking operation. Why did it happen at the fracking operation? Because we all understand. Let me explain it like this. We all understand a perforation on a cardboard edge. So if you bend a piece of cardboard, normally it will bend here and there. But if you have a perforation along that edge, it bends there when you put force upon either side. The same thing could be said for a fracking operation. A fracking operation are a series of deep wells that have either been drilled or fractured out, and they go deep down into the Earth's crust, up to 10,000 feet, according to the one report that I read. Just for Colbrand alone, they're drilling down to about 2 miles, 2.5, 3 miles. Okay, so they drilled a well to 10,000 feet almost, beyond 10,000 feet. So that is a weak point. That acts just like what a volcanic tube would act like in a currently active volcano, only instead of it being filled with lava, it's filled with liquid sand. And if you put pressure on that and force all of that up, it's going to come out just like squeezing on a boil or something. I mean, don't be disgusting, but that's what it would be like. It would come up and fracture out and come out at the weakest point in the surface. And that's what I believe happened in Colorado. And the denial, the amount of shills, the amount of oil company cronies that came over to my page, let me know I was on the right track right from the start. There's no way they're going to pounce on me like that right off the bat unless I'm 100% correct on it being a fracking connection. Now, I called 9 News in Colorado. You guys may know I lived out in Denver for several years. Okay, I've got an NBC somewhat connection. They've interviewed me here in St. Louis and covered a few of my stories. So I called 9 News in Colorado to let them know that fracking was indeed at the location. And all the areas that they're zooming in on, mainstream media is conveniently leaving out all the oil and frack wells right there. And the guy on the phone was polite and nice, and he's like, "Who are you? And do you have a post on this? Do you have pictures?" And I gave him my information, and he's like, "Oh, okay." And he got quiet, and he basically hung up on me. They don't want people to know. And guess who showed up out in Colorado yesterday, right? So the collapse happens, all this bad publicity on fracking happens, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce sends their head guy out to Colorado, out to Denver, to teach local companies, local gas and oil companies, how to deal with online attacks. How to deal with online attacks. Okay, so last night, I would be interested to see if anybody has footage of this town hall meeting that was held. The number of deniers who came over saying they lived in the area and that there was no fracking going on at all, that to me tells me that it may be a situation where locals own some of the wells there, and they're not going to want to admit it, and the government's not going to want to admit it. But there it is. It came out like a shaken up can of soda. And they're doing CO2 at the area with high pressure sands. What more can I say? Okay, so that happened pretty much all week long. That's kind of like the news that I've been dealing with all week is either the earthquakes or the fracking operations producing these weird results now. Earthquake swarms, collapses, sand geysers, plumes. We have a series of plumes that have happened over the last several months. Again, traced back to frack well flare-offs. People were trying to say those were farmers burning their fields. What? No, we traced each one back. It's back to an oil well that's doing a flare off, which is even worse than just a volcanic event. At least that's natural. I mean, it doesn't, and again, this all goes back to abolishing the corporation. Everything that I just bitched about here, the oil company involvement with the government, well, those days would be over. The oil company would be on record as to how much they have to donate to the government on the fundraiser that they have to raise. We need to cut this stuff out. We're destroying the planet. Everybody debated me for years. Dutchsinse doesn't know what he's talking about fracking. There's no fracking earthquake connection. No professional has ever confirmed fracking is causing earthquakes, Dutchsinse. Shut up. Come on. And now USGS comes out, American Geophysical Union comes out. They all come out and confirm it 2 years too late and beyond the damage that already occurred at multiple locations. Those grandmas. Remember that chimney that fell in on the woman? Oh, that's right. You guys don't remember the chimney that fell on the woman. Not you guys, but the skeptics who were saying that there was no damage being caused by... Man, there's a lady with a bloody forehead, 70 years old, where a chimney fell in her house off a fracking earthquake.
3 minutes to break.
Okay. And here I am. I get worked up. How about all the people that died over in Italy, guys? You remember that? Everybody was in denial then. That was 2012. 6.0 earthquake struck North Italy at that fracking operation. You had 15 people killed. You willing to revisit that one, everyone, all the skeptics? Now that the USGS and American Geophysical Union have confirmed everything that we were talking about before? Anyways, this becomes frustrating for me because of the amount of denial. Tat, you get this with 1871. People just don't want to hear it. You know, they're like, I can't do anything about it. What am I supposed to do? Well, you're supposed to say something. You're supposed to say something to the people that own the wells. Say something. To the people that go out on July 5th and 6th, you see them out spending money on July 5th and 6th, say something to them. You don't have to be rude or ignorant. Just let them know. Sometimes just letting somebody know is the step in the right direction. Guarantee you some of those locals heard about the fracking connection. And they're not believing the USGS toolbox who's standing up there pointing to a lake that doesn't exist. Where's the footage, man? Where's the pictures? There's a lake up there. There's a helicopter flying over. It's completely dry. What the hell's going on? Any ideas, Tat? I mean, really, what kind of, why are we willing to put up with abuse? We talked about this 2 weeks ago. This is just like dealing with somebody who's on drugs. Why do we put up with abuse? Because we settle for something. We don't want to rock the boat in our families or in our lives or at work, and it leads to disaster. A problem not confronted is a problem that grows. It's just that simple. We all know in real life, do not neglect the problems in your real life because they will grow into something that's unmanageable. And the same thing's happening with our country, with our environment, with our world, and it all leads back to greed.
Corporate greed.
That's right. You know, the love of money is the root of all evil.